The last breath before hope. The alarms screamed across the broken starship. Red lights flickered across every corridor like angry eyes blinking in panic. Fire hissed from exposed wires. Metal groaned under stress, the hull threatening to collapse. Somewhere deep inside, a single oxygen mask dangled uselessly from a cracked wall panel, and on the floor, curled into a trembling ball, was a tiny alien girl, barely more than a child, gasping for air. Her name was Zari, a delicate creature with luminous violet eyes and pale translucent skin that shimmered faintly under the emergency lights. Her breathing came in short, painful gasps. Her little chest heaved as she clawed weakly at her throat. Her body unused to the thinning atmosphere, humans barely noticed. The oxygen scrubbers had failed hours ago, and now she was suffocating. Slowly, painfully, across the corridor, a human limped through the smoke-filled hallway. Commander Yolan, Crossformer rescue pilot, now stranded survivor, dragged a fractured leg and clutched his cracked helmet. He'd been scavenging for life support units when he heard the faint rasping noise. Not an engine, not a leak, a breath. He followed the sound with growing dread. When he reached the corner and saw her barely alive, her hands reaching out for something unseen, he didn't hesitate. His training kicked in, but it wasn't just protocol anymore. It was instinct. It was heart. Without thinking, Yolan yanked the emergency oxygen mask from his suit and dropped to his knees beside her. He placed it over her face, sealing it gently. The girl's eyes widened in confusion, then fluttered shut as sweet air surged into her lungs. Her breathing steadied, her fingers unclenched. She was alive. Yolan exhaled hard, suddenly aware that he had just given up his own oxygen line. He'd maybe bought her 30 more minutes, but taken 10 from himself. The corridor around them groaned again, a violent tremor shaking the floor. Yolan coughed, dizziness already creeping into his skull. He pulled the alien girl into his arms, light as a bundle of cloth, and turned back the way he came. "Hang in there, kid," he muttered. "I'm getting you out." The ship's layout was damaged beyond recognition. Navigation systems were down, fires blocked some routes, depressurized chambers others. But Yolan had one goal, the cryogenic bay. If he could get her into one of the sleeping pods, she'd have a shot at survival. Those systems had independent oxygen, and they were sealed against exposure. His boots stumbled through floating ash, bulkheads hissed steam and wires sparked like angry snakes. He turned a corner and nearly slipped on spilled coolant, but he didn't let go of her. Her tiny fingers had wrapped gently around the oxygen hose connected to her face. She was still unconscious, but alive. As he reached the intersection near the cryodeck, a loud clang echoed down the hall. Jalen stopped. His blood ran cold. The sound came again, metal dragging against metal. Something alive. Something hunting. He moved faster. Just ahead, the cryo bay doors flickered erratically. He slammed the manual override. The door whined open. Inside, flickering blue lights illuminated rows of sleep pods, most damaged. Some empty, others flashing red. One still glowed green. He crossed the bay, laid the alien child gently inside, and activated the pod's containment field. The interior filled with clean air, thermal blankets, and stabilizing nanogel. The pod sealed with a hiss. Her vitals blinked steadily. Zari was stable. A breath of relief escaped Jalen's lips, but that breath tasted like copper and smoke. He leaned against the pod, his own lungs burning, his vision dimmed. The dizziness was growing faster now. Then he heard it again. A deep mechanical growl, a heavy thump of footfall. He turned and, standing at the doorway, was something not entirely machine, not entirely man. A cybernetic radar, twisted by tech and time, its red eye blinking, scanning. Its armor was scorched, one arm ending in a jagged blade that sparked with energy. Jalen reached for the closest tool he had, a sharp metal shard from the floor. His hands trembled, but his stance was firm. The cyborg took a step forward, but stopped. Its eye flickered as it scanned the pod. Ben Jalen. Ear tilted its head. "You saved." The air. The voice came out mangled and deep, like rust scraping through a speaker. Yolan blinked, confused. "What?" The machine took another step, its blade lowered slightly. Sheikans marked, blood of the royal kin, bounty, on her head. Jalen's grip tightened on the shard. "I don't care who she is. She was dying." The cyborg's red eye dimmed for a long moment. Then it said, slowly, "I was once her protector." Jalen's eyes widened. Before he could speak, the cyborg moved. Not toward him, but toward the crowd. It extended its blade and stabbed it into the energy port connected to the ship's power. Relay electricity surged through its body. Its systems sparked, armor split. It was sacrificing itself. The pod's power stabilized instantly, lights turning from flickering to steady green. The girl's vitals glowed stronger. The machine's voice dropped to a whisper. Protect, both of them. Then it collapsed. Smoking and still Yalon stood frozen. Two things had just become clear. One, this wasn't a random attack. That girl's Ari was someone important. And two, someone else, even a broken machine, still believed she deserved to live. He fell to his knees, chest heaving, every breath harder than the last. He looked up, saw the escape pod controls blinking. There was still one pod left, and one signal flashing, eject sequence ready. His hand reached up, fingers trembling. He tapped the screen, a hiss echoed through the bay. The second escape pod detached from the ruined ship and launched silently into space. Inside it, a small alien girl breathed easier for the first time. Above, a human rescue ship blinked into existence on the far edge of the stars. And far below, in a dying vessel, a human lay beside a sleeping alien girl, his strength fading but his mission not yet over. Signals in the silence. The stars outside the viewport drifted like silent witnesses to everything that had happened. Deep in the bowels of the shattered starship, Yalon Cross lay on the cold metal floor beside the cryopod where Zari slept. His body trembled from oxygen deprivation, but his heart was steady. He looked up weakly at the green light on the pod, steady, constant. She was safe, that was all that mattered. Every second her vitals stayed stable was proof that the sacrifice had meant something. Even the broken cyborg, who'd once been her guardian, had given its last breath to protect her. Maybe the universe wasn't so heartless after all. But Yalon wasn't done. He dragged himself across the bay, toward a nearby console. His breath came in ragged bursts, his vision narrowing to a tunnel. Every step was a struggle against gravity, exhaustion, and the thick ache in his lungs. He had maybe minutes before he'd pass out, maybe forever. His wrist beacon blinked softly. A signal. He pulled himself up against the terminal, fumbling for the port. The old interface hissed as he connected his wrist device to the comms relay. Static buzzed across the screen. Most systems were fried, but then one green bar, just enough. He tapped a button. Rescue ship, he croaked. This is Yalon Cross, human survivor. 2 alien children, one launched, one cryo-stabilized. His voice cracked. He couldn't tell if the signal was transmitting. The console lights dimmed, flickered, then sparked. He slammed a hand on the panel. Repeat. 2 lives, need extraction. Then silence. He slumped against the console, head bowed, the world spinning into darkness. But somewhere, that signal traveled. Across the cold stretch of space, the HRS Resolute caught the transmission. On its bridge, Lieutenant Myra Vega leaned forward in her chair, watching as the message decoded, piece by piece. Her eyes widened. Captain, she called out, you're going to want to see this. Captain Reese Mercer, a grizzled veteran with sharp eyes and a jaw like carved stone, stepped beside her. He read the message once, then again. Get a lock on that transmission point, he ordered, and prep medical. We've got survivors, Sir, Mira said, pointing at the display. That pod we picked up, it matches this. Same origin. Point that little girl, she was launched from the same wreck. Captain Mercer's eyes softened. Then we owe that man our speed. Set a course. Bring us to that ship. As the Resolute veered toward the wrecked freighter, young Zari stirred inside the escape pod, her tiny fingers pressed against the glass, eyes searching the stars. She didn't know if Yalon was still alive, but deep inside, she felt something, a connection, a promise. She whispered his name, though her language twisted it softly. Jalon. The Resolute approached quickly, its hull gleaming with polished metal and medical insignia. Drones scanned the region, turret arrays locked down. Possible threats. Inside, a boarding crew prepared for entry. 4 humans in tactical suits, armed with rescue equipment and energy shields, stood ready near the deployment bay. Among them was Dr. Cale Riven, the ship's field medic, known for his quick hands and quicker thinking. He held a child evac unit in one arm, a portable oxygen pack in the other. Got a feeling this one's going to be personal, he muttered. Why? Asked one of the troopers. Cale looked at the transmission again. Because no one gives up their oxygen unless they care more about someone else's breath than their own. The boarding shuttle detached from the Resolute and descended. Below, the freighter looked like a ghost, burnt, half-twisted, and adrift. Inside, Yalon stirred. He blinked slowly, the ceiling above him blurred by tears and pain. A new sound broke the silence, a rumble, faint but growing. He pushed himself upright, coughing violently. His hand scrambled for his sidearm, long gone. All he had now was his stubborn will and a cryopod to protect. He stood on shaking legs and reached the window. There it was. A light. A ship. That hurt him, but as he turned back to Kira's pod, a shadow moved behind him. Something still lived in the darkness of the freighter. A second radar seeker, faster than the first, skulked along the ruin, ceiling like a spider made of steel. Its red sensors scanned Jalen's heat signature. Unlike the broken guardian that gave its life to save Zari, this one had no conscience. It had no past. It only had orders: kill the protector, retrieve the heir. A shriek of metal tore through the cryobay as the cyborg dropped from above. Jalen spun, grabbing a length of pipe from the floor. His arms barely held steady, but he stood between the cyborg and the pod. "I'm not letting you take her," he growled. The cyborg lunged. Jalen swung wildly. Sparks flew. The pipe bent. The blow barely slowed the machine. It backhanded him across the room. He hit the wall hard and collapsed. The cyborg advanced toward the pod. Its scanner locked on the life signature. Target acquired. Then a blinding flash dash boom. The wall behind it erupted. The rescue shuttle had landed. Smoke poured in, and out of it came the human boarding team. They fired stun pulses in quick succession. The cyborg reeled, armor absorbing the hits. It returned fire with plasma bursts. One trooper went down. Another ducked for cover. Kale sprinted in behind them, saw Yolan crumpled on the ground. He dropped to his knees beside him. "You the guy who sent the pod?" Jalen's eyes fluttered open. "She okay? She's alive. You both are. Now let's finish this." The firefight raged across the cryobay. Yolan used the last of his strength to crawl toward the pod. He pressed himself against it, shielding it with his body even as energy bolts scorched the floor around him. The cyborg advanced, unrelenting, until a trooper tossed a shock grenade. It detonated with a high-pitched scream. The cyborg convulsed. Circuits overloaded. Its body spasmed, then dropped with a thunderous clang. Silence followed. Kale exhaled hard. Clear. The team rushed forward. Kale scanned Jalen's vitals, applied an emergency air patch to his mouth, and motioned to two troopers. "Secure the pod. He goes too. This guy's not just a survivor, he's a damn hero." Within minutes, they were aboard the shuttle again. The ship pulled away from the collapsing wreck, engines firing just as the freighter's core began to implode from within. Inside the shuttle, Yolan lay on a stretcher, wrapped in a thermal blanket. Kira's pod pulsed softly beside him. Zari, already aboard the Resolute, sat near the docking bay door, her eyes fixed on the stars, searching. And when the shuttle door finally hissed open, she saw him, the human who gave her breath, and she ran. A breath that changed everything. The doors to the rescue shuttle slid open with a hiss, releasing a wave of warm, oxygen-rich air into the hangar bay of the Resolute. Crew members in white and gray medical uniforms rushed forward, scanning for injuries and prepping equipment, but none of them moved faster than Zari. The moment she saw him, lying on that stretcher, pale and still, her tiny feet hit the floor. She didn't hesitate. She didn't ask. She just ran. Her bare feet slapped against the polished floor as she darted between the medical crew. The oxygen mask Jack had given her was still clutched in one hand, its strap trailing behind her like a ribbon. Her other hand reached forward, her soft voice crying out a single, broken word. Everyone paused. The medics glanced down, startled, as the little alien girl flung herself at the stretcher. She wrapped her arms around his arm, burying her face in his shoulder. Tears welled in her luminous violet eyes, spilling down her cheeks, and soaking into the human's jumpsuit. Yolan stirred, his fingers twitched. He opened his eyes slowly, as if every blink were a battle, and then he saw her. He whispered, barely audible. She nodded, still crying, her small hands clinging tightly to him. He couldn't understand her language, but her eyes said enough. They spoke the same language, now the language of survival, of hope, of something. Neither of them had before. Family. The captain of the Resolute, Reese Mercer, stepped into the hangar, his boots clicking sharply on the floor. He stopped beside the stretcher, watching the two with narrowed but thoughtful eyes. He turned to the medic. Kale status. Kale finished scanning Jalen's vitals. Stable, but oxygen saturation is dangerously low. He gave up his own supply. To save her, Reese looked down at Yalan. That true? Yalan nodded faintly, had no choice. Reese studied him for a moment. Then he turned to the crew. Get them both to medbay. The girl stays close to him. The medical team moved quickly now, lifting Yolan onto a hover stretcher while another medic gently picked Zari up, but she wouldn't let go of his hand. Her grip remained tight as they floated down the sterile white corridors of the ship, passing crew members who paused to watch the strange pair. One human, One alien child, both survivors of a nightmare most couldn't even imagine. Inside the medical wing, the atmosphere was calm but efficient. Machines beeped rhythmically. Soft lights bathed the room in a peaceful glow. The beds were lined with sanitizing filters, and the air smelled faintly of citrus and ozone. Jale, and was laid onto a medical bed, 4 lines connected to his arm, breathing support affixed to his face. Zari sat in the chair beside him, still holding his hand. No one tried to move her. Across the room, Kira's cryopod was being gently wheeled in. Medical technicians prepared to wake her slowly. They spoke softly, in case she was disoriented or scared when she opened her eyes. Yolan stirred. Again he blinked toward the pod, his voice hoarse. Is she okay? Kale glanced up. Your second package. The older girl. He checked the monitors. Cryostable. Will begin reanimation in a few hours. She's lucky you found that pod. Yolan gave a weak nod. She's not just cargo. She's Zari's sister. Kale looked between them, then back at the monitor. His face softened. Then she's got a reason to wake up. Hours passed. Zari never left Jalen's side. At one point, a nurse tried to lead her away to a smaller medbed for scanning, but the girl refused. Not violently, just firmly. She sat quietly, eyes never moving from the human who had saved her life. When Yolan finally regained full consciousness, he was greeted by the sight of her asleep in the chair, still holding his hand. He smiled faintly, despite the dull pain in his chest, and then a sound drew his attention. The cryopod hissed. Lights changed from green to yellow, then blue. Inside, Kira stirred. Her fingers moved first, then her eyes opened, blinking against the filtered light above her. She sat up, fast, confused, afraid. She looked around, gasping in short, panicked breaths. Yolan lifted himself slowly. Hey, he said gently. She turned toward the voice, her eyes locked onto his. You're okay, he said. You're safe. Kira blinked. Her voice cracked as if summoned. Zari stirred and sat up, blinking groggily. When her eyes landed on her sister, her expression exploded with joy. She leaped from the chair and ran to the pod. Kira opened her arms. They collided in a tearful, tangled embrace. Yolan looked away, emotion rising in his throat. He let them have their moment. Kale stepped in quietly beside him. You pulled off a miracle, you know. Yolan didn't answer right away. Then he said softly, I just did what anyone should. Kale chuckled. I've met a lot of people in space. Commander, trust me, most wouldn't have done what you did. Giving up your oxygen, staying behind to guard a cryopod, fighting off 2 cybernetic killers with scrap metal. That's not standard protocol. Yolan looked at the 2 alien sisters curled up together, still holding on to one another like they might disappear if they let go. No, he said, but it should be. Kale nodded, respecting the words. Later that night, the medical wing was quiet. Yolan lay under soft lighting, breathing steadily again. Zari slept beside his bed, curled in a blanket a nurse had wrapped around her, and in the pod next to them, Kira stared at the ceiling awake, silent, but no longer afraid. She turned her head to look at Yolan. Why? She asked in broken English. He opened his eyes. Why did you save us? Yolan looked at her for a long moment, then he said, because someone had to. Kira's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. Understanding, maybe, or trust, or both. She whispered, thank you. And for the first time in what felt like forever, Yolan didn't feel alone. Not in the ship, not in the galaxy, and not in his heart. The family would choose morning aboard the Resolute came not with sunlight, but with the gentle chime of ships, clocks, and the soft hum of engines holding steady in orbit. Yolan sat up slowly in the medbay, stretching against the soreness that clung to his body like leftover gravity. His muscles ached, his ribs still throbbed, but he was alive, and so were they. He looked to his left. Zari was still curled beneath the blanket on the nearby cot. One tiny arm flung across her face, her chest rising and falling in slow rhythm. Her hair, faintly silver in the ship's light, shimmered like stardust. She clutched the same oxygen mask he had given her now, just a memory of that moment between death and survival. On his right, Kira sat in a medical chair, upright, alert. Her posture was straight, her expression guarded, but her eyes never wandered far from her sister. She'd barely slept since waking up. Yolan had seen that look before on child soldiers, on refugees, on anyone who'd lived too long afraid to rest. She was scanning everything, everyone, even him. Morning, he said softly. She glanced at him. You talk while sleeping. Yolan raised an eyebrow. Yeah, you said don't let go. 3 times. Yolan chuckled. Sounds about right. Kira looked at him more closely. You, our soldier. was he replied. Search and rescue. Mostly cleanup missions. Sometimes worse. She nodded slowly, then turned her eyes back to her sister. She had no one, she whispered. No family. I was taken. They left her behind. Yalan sat up straighter. But she's got you now. Kira's voice cracked just slightly. And you, he blinked. You saved her. I tried, he said. I didn't know who she was. Just saw a little girl who needed help. Kira looked at him, then really looked. The silence between them stretched. Not empty, but full of all the things they couldn't say. Pain, survival. Questions that no translator could ever fully explain. You gave her your mask. She said. She told me. She remembers. She was dying, Yalan said. There wasn't time to think. She trusts you, Kira added. Softer. She doesn't trust anyone. Not even before Yolan leaned back, his voice quiet. Sometimes you don't choose who you protect. You just protect. At that moment, the door to the medbay slid open with a soft whir and Captain Reese Mercer entered. His coat was crisp, his boots polished, and his presence, as always, felt like gravity. He looked at Yolan, then at the girls. You're awake. Good. Yolan nodded. More or less. We've docked with a civilian orbital outpost, Mercer said. Earth Alliance is sending diplomatic envoys. Apparently, these two aren't just passengers. Kira stiffened. Yolan noticed her family. He asked. Mercer shook his head. All records show a planet-raised political coup. The girls are survivors of a lost ruling class. That escape pod you launched saved one of the last bloodlines from that system. Jalan's stomach tightened, so that cyborg wasn't random. No, Mercer said. It was banter-driven. Someone paid a lot of credits to make sure those girls never made it back. And now, Yolan asked. Mercer sighed. Now that they're safe, politics will do what politics does. They'll be offered asylum, monitored, and placed into custody. Diplomatic, but still custody. No, Kira said sharply. We won't go. Not again. Mercer turned to her. It's not my call. Earth Command will expect a transfer. Yolan stood, pain rippling through his side. They're not assets, they're kids, and we're not handing them over like diplomatic cargo. The captain studied him carefully. Then what do you suggest? Let them stay with me, you said without hesitation, at least until we figure out what's safe. I'll take responsibility. Mercer crossed his arms. That's not standard procedure. Neither was anything that just happened, Yolan replied. Zari stirred in her cot and sat up, yawning softly. She rubbed her eyes and looked toward the voices. When she saw Yolan standing between Kira and the captain, her small face lit up. She slid off the cot, crossed the floor barefoot, and walked right up to him. She didn't speak. She just wrapped her arms around his waist and hugged him. Captain Mercer watched in silence. Then he exhaled, long and slow. Fine, he said. Temporary custody. Earth Command won't like it, but I'll sign off for now. They stay with you. Yolan looked down at Zari, then at Kira. Thank you, he said. Don't thank me yet, Mercer replied. The hard part hasn't started. The next day they moved into a private living unit aboard the orbital station. It wasn't luxurious, but it was warm, clean, and most importantly quiet. Zari wandered the apartment with wide eyes. She marveled at the food dispenser, the touch-controlled lights, and the glass window showing Earth spinning gently below. Kira remained cautious, rarely letting Zari out of her sight. But Yolan gave them space. Trust wasn't earned with words. It was built with time. He had a small room to himself, a kitchen unit, and a corner that he quickly turned into a sleeping nest for the girls' blankets, a pillow fort, and a glowing lamp that Zari picked out from the inventory list. That night, after dinner, the three of them sat quietly at the small table. Yolan sipped coffee. Zari doodled on a touchscreen pad. Kira slowly turned the pages of a digital book about planetary biology. Jalen glanced up. I've never had roommates before, he said. Zari giggled. Kira didn't smile, but her eyes softened. Then, after a long pause, she said, we won't be a burden. Yolan leaned forward. You're not, and he meant it. In the silence that followed, something shifted. Not just circumstance, but connection. A bond not of blood, but of choice, of family. Somewhere to belong. The days passed, like pages in a new chapter, unfolding slowly but with purpose. Life aboard the orbital station above Earth wasn't glamorous, but for Zari and Kira it was something they hadn't known in years. Safe. And for Yalan it was something even rarer, peace, that the crew of the Resolute had left behind the chaos of the rescue. The station's civilian staff kept a polite distance, offering polite nods to the man who'd saved the royal aliens, as the media had dubbed them. News of the incident had spread quickly, another galactic scandal for politicians to spin, but Yolan had turned off every channel. The only thing he wanted to hear was laughter in his quarters. Zari brought that laughter easily, she discovered. Earth food and became obsessed with strawberry-flavored anything. On one occasion, she somehow reprogrammed the food unit to dispense nothing but pink drinks and warm pastries. Yalan found her that morning covered in sticky crumbs and smiling like she'd won a war. I think she's organizing a sugar revolution, he said dryly to Kira. Kira, who sat curled in a chair across the room reading a data slate, didn't look up. At least she's not trying to rewire the lights again, Yalan laughed. You say that like it didn't blow out half the panel. Kira allowed the tiniest curve of her lips a flicker of amusement that had taken weeks to coax out. It was the kind of smile that only happened when she forgot, for just a moment, the things she'd seen, the things she'd lost. She was older than Zari by at least 6 Earth years, but the galaxy had aged her even more. She rarely slept more than 4 hours at a time and spent her days poring over medical files, anatomy charts, and survival manuals. You learning to be a doctor? Yalan asked once, passing her in the hallway. I want to fix things, she replied, so they don't break again. Yalan didn't press, he just nodded. That's a good reason. Later that week, a visitor came. Unannounced. Jalen opened the door to find Ambassador Talia Viaran, a polished diplomat from Earth Command, standing with 2 aides and a pair of tall, silent guards. She wore a pale silver uniform and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Commander Cross, she greeted. You've been busy. I've been resting, he replied. That a problem? Not yet, she said. May I come in? He stepped aside reluctantly. Zari peeked from behind a corner, eyes wide. Kira stood in front of her like a shield. The ambassador noticed immediately. Those must be the girls. Jalan's tone hardened. They have names. Talia's smile tightened. Of course, we've reviewed their case. Their situation is delicate. That's one word for it. They're political figures, she said. Important ones. Earth Command would like to offer them diplomatic sanctuary under our supervision. You mean custody? Kira snapped from behind him. Talia turned toward her. It would be for your protection. There are still bounties. Dangerous enemies. Yalan stepped between them. They're not going anywhere. Not without consent. Talia's gaze narrowed. They're minors. Alien minors. You're a civilian now. Technically, you don't have legal authority. Then let's make it legal. Yalan said calmly. File the forms. Push the paper. Call it guardianship. Call it whatever you want. I'll stay on Earth if I have to. I'll take full responsibility. Talia studied him. Why? Because they're not just someone's problem. They're someone's people. The ambassador was silent for a long time. Then she gave a small nod. Very well. But understand this makes you a target too. They'll come for them again. Let them, Yalan replied. They'll have to come through me. As Talia left, Zari stepped beside him and slipped her hand into his. Was she going to take us? She asked in a whisper. Not anymore, he said. Not as long as I'm around. That night, the wind outside the orbital station's artificial ecosystem hummed like ocean waves in a distant dream. Yalan stood in the kitchen, warming tea. Behind him, the girls were watching an old Earth cartoon on the room's holographic projector. Zari giggled at the silly voice acting. Kira sat stiffly, watching with her arms crossed, but she didn't leave. Yalan brought them both cups of warm cocoa, earning a beaming smile from Zari and a quiet thank you from Kira. As they sipped, Zari leaned against his side and asked, softly, do all humans live on Earth? Yalan shook his head. Not all. Some live on stations. Some on ships. Some are born in colonies on other planets. But Earth, that's our first home. Zari's eyes lit up. Can we go there someday? He paused, then smiled. Yeah, I think we should. Kira raised an eyebrow. It's safe. It's flawed, he admitted, but it tries, and it's got real trees. Zari gasped. Trees. Kira rolled her eyes. She's never seen one, Yalan chuckled. Then we'll go find the biggest one we can. Later that evening, Yalan was tucking Zari into her little bed, the one she'd filled with plush toys gifted from the station's crew. She reached up and held his sleeve. Why did you save me? She asked again. He looked down at her. Because you were worth saving. She blinked. But I'm not human. He brushed her silver hair back gently. Doesn't matter. You were scared, you were hurting, you were alive. That's all I needed to know. She smiled a tired, sleepy kind of smile and closed her eyes. Across the room, Kira sat with a medical scanner in her lap. She didn't say anything, but when Yalan passed her, she murmured, you didn't just save her. He stopped. You saved me too. Yalan turned. She looked up, vulnerability creeping through her mask. You gave us something we never had, somewhere to belong. Yalan knelt beside her. Then we'll protect that place. Together. Kira nodded once. Then, almost too softly to hear, she whispered, "Thank you, Dad." The word hit like lightning. She froze, eyes wide, embarrassed, but Yolande didn't laugh. He didn't flinch. He just reached out, put his hand gently on her shoulder, and said, "Always." The fire we carried the weeks that followed were quiet in a way Yolande had never experienced. Not dull, just peaceful. It was the kind of quiet that settled inside your chest, replacing constant alertness with something softer, something unfamiliar, but welcomed. Belonging. Jalen took a civilian post on the orbital station, light maintenance, diagnostics, and routine inspections. It was the kind of work that didn't involve life or death decisions. But every evening when he returned to the unit and was greeted by Zari's endless questions or Kira's rare, thoughtful glances, he knew he'd made the right choice. Still, danger in space didn't vanish just because you stopped running. One morning, he received a message ping while calibrating a vent system in Section 9. The sender's ID was scrambled, but the content was chilling. "You have something that does not belong to you. Return the child, or others will suffer. You have one cycle." Yalan stared at the screen, pulse hammering. His mind raced. The encryption was advanced, clearly. He flagged it and forwarded it to station security before sprinting back to his quarters. When he arrived, he found Kira and Zari at the window. They were drawing on the fogged glass with their fingers, laughing quietly. He stood in the doorway for a moment, catching his breath not from running, but from what he was about to do. "Kira," he said firmly. She turned, sensing the shift in his tone immediately. "Something's wrong," she said. He nodded. She reached out, took Zari's hand. "What happened?" Yolande tapped his wrist. "Come." A holographic display opened in the air, showing the message. Kira's expression hardened. "They found us." Zari's smile faded. "Who are they?" Yolande knelt beside her, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "Bad people, ones who don't think you should be safe." "But why?" Zari asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Kira stepped forward. "Because she's blood of the Velatari line, last of the Starborn. Our planet was rich in energy crystals. Our family protected them, until the others came. They wanted power. We were in the way." Zari blinked. "You never told me that." "I didn't want you to remember," Kira said softly. "We were just children when they burned our skies." Yolande stood up, eyes focused. "Then we prepared." They moved quickly. Yolande met with Captain Mercer in a private briefing room, presenting the message and every security log he'd collected. Mercer's jaw clenched. "We suspected there'd be follow-up," the captain muttered. "You embarrassed the wrong people. Saving them meant torching a dozen covert ops in one go." "Then we use that," Yolande said. "Make them show themselves." Mercer raised an eyebrow. "You want to bait them? They're already coming. Let's control how." Jalen's plan was simple, bold, reckless, and it might be the only way to keep the girls safe. They staged a routine atmospheric shuttle trip cover story, a supervised Earth visit for cultural acclimation, standard protocol, media blackout, station manifest scrubbed. The real goal: draw out whoever was watching. Kira wasn't thrilled. "You're using us as bait," she said in the shuttle bay, arms crossed. "No," Yolande replied. "I'm making sure they come to me, not to someone else. This ends now." Zari, standing beside him with her hand in his, looked up and whispered, "Will it hurt?" He knelt, looking her straight in the eye. "Not if I can help it." But launched at 0400 station time, the shuttle, Eclipse Runner, cut smoothly through the black as it descended toward Earth's atmosphere. Inside, Yalon wore light tactical gear beneath a civilian jacket. Kale Riven joined as their assigned medic though. He carried more than just medical gear in his satchel. Kira wore a dark hood, her eyes constantly scanning. She had learned human tech. Quickly strapped to her wrist was a jerry-rigged sensor reader she'd rebuilt from scrap. Zari, quiet and tense, sat by the window, clutching a small hand-carved pendant Yalan had given her, a tiny metal star, etched with 3 figures. Their family. "I hear engines," Kira whispered suddenly. Jalen's head snapped toward the window. He saw them 2 black ships, no transponders, no communication, just sleek metal and predatory grace. "Ambush," Kale muttered, unstrapping quickly. The first blast rocked the shuttle. Panels exploded. Alarms screamed. Jalen leaped into action. "Emergency descent." Kira held Zari. Kale grabbed an emergency pod and slammed it into place, creating a shielded shell around the cockpit. The pilot was out cold. Yalone grabbed the manual override. "We're crashing," Zari cried. Landing, Yalone corrected. They hit atmosphere like a burning comet. The sky screamed. Clouds split. Trees blurred. Then dash impact. The shuttle tore through the forest, crashing in a cacophony of splintering wood and molten sparks, before coming to a stop near a hillside. Smoke, fire, silence, then movement. Yalan crawled out first, dragging himself from the wreckage, blood in his mouth. He turned and saw Kira pulling Zari from the broken pod. They were alive but shaken. Is this part of the plan? Kale groaned, limping out behind them. Plans evolving, Yalan muttered overhead. Dark ships hovered. Troops descended. 5, then 10. Armored, masked. One stepped forward and pointed at Zari. Give us the girl. Yolan stepped in front of her. Kira did too. The soldier raised his weapon. Then a shot rang out from the trees. A second figure dropped from the canopy, taking down 2 soldiers in a blink. Another shot, another scream. Mercer's backup team had arrived, stealth-cloaked rapid response units from the Resolute. The forest erupted in chaos. Blasters lit up the trees. Smoke grenades blinded the enemies. Yalan tackled one soldier, ripping the weapon from his hands. Kira picked up a fallen rifle and fired 3 times with precise aim, protecting her sister like a warrior born. Kale pulled Zari behind a rock, shielding her from shrapnel. We stay here, little star, he whispered. They won't get you. Above, the lead attacker aimed a high-powered energy cannon at Yalan. You can't stop all of us, he shouted. Jalen raised his own weapon. I don't need to. Behind him, Kira fired again, hitting the attacker square in the shoulder. He fell, screaming. The rest surrendered within minutes. When the dust cleared, the Resolute's medevac shuttle landed beside the smoldering wreck. Captain Mercer stepped out, nodded at the carnage, then at Yalan. You're insane, he muttered. But it worked. Yalan picked up Zari, who clung tightly to his neck. Yeah, he said, voice hoarse. But now they know no one touches them again. Mercer looked at Kira, who stood tall beside her sister. She's ready, he said quietly. For what? Yalan asked. Mercer turned to him. Whatever future she chooses. And in that forest, scarred by fire but safe for the moment, their family stood together, not by fate, but by choice. Home is where you stay. 2 months had passed since the forest ambush. The news cycle moved on, as it always did, chasing new scandals, fresh disasters. The headlines about the royal alien children rescued by exhuman soldier faded into background noise, but for Yolan, Kira and Zari, life didn't return to normal, that it became something better, real. They didn't go back to the orbital station. Earth Command offered relocation to a protected colony somewhere quiet, away from the eyes of bounty hunters and old regimes. Yalan had only one request: no bunkers, no cages, just sky and soil. So, they were sent to Sorellen, a small settlement on the edge of Earth's western continent, nestled in a valley of whispering pines and gentle winds. The colony had no skyscrapers, no hover traffic, just open space, real trees, and people who minded their own business. The house they were given was modest. 3 rooms, creaky floors, a wraparound porch, and a backyard that ended in a lake so clear you could see the clouds reflected in it. To Zari it was paradise. The first thing she did when they arrived was race barefoot into the meadow, arms spread wide, laughing as the grass tickled her skin. She stopped only when a real butterfly landed on her nose, and then she screamed in joy. Kira, on the other hand, walked the perimeter 3 times before she unpacked her bag. She checked every sensor, scanned for surveillance, catalogued escape routes. Then she sat on the porch, watched the sunset, and for the first time said nothing at all. Jalen stood behind her, arms crossed. You believe it yet? He asked. Kira tilted her head. That we're safe, he clarified. She didn't respond right away. Her eyes scanned the horizon. Then she said, I believe we have a chance. That was enough. In the weeks that followed, routines emerged. Mornings began with breakfast, sometimes Earth cereal, sometimes the strange spiced grain Kira recreated from memory. Zari insisted on cooking once, resulting in a flour explosion that took 2 hours to clean. No one was mad. Kira spent her days studying at the colony's science outpost. She had quickly impressed the local medics with her sharp mind and faster hands. She didn't speak much, but when she did, people listened. Jalen took a job repairing solar grids and water pumps. He liked the work quiet, meaningful. At night, he read old books by firelight and tucked Zari in with stories of made-up dragons and mischievous raccoons that always managed to escape trouble. She giggled every time. One evening, as the sky turned purple with dusk, Zari sat on the back steps holding her pendant, the metal star Yolan had made. She traced the 3 figures etched into it with her thumb, one tall, one medium, one small. Yalan, she said softly. He looked up from his seat nearby. Are we a real family now? He set down his cup and joined her on the steps. We've always been one, he said, but we're not the same, she whispered. He smiled. That's not what family means. Zari looked up at the stars. Do you think my real parents would have liked you? Yalan hesitated, heart catching at her use of real, but then she added quickly, I mean, before they were gone, because I like you, he chuckled, pulled her into a gentle hug. I think they'd be proud of who you are, and proud that you survived, and I hope they'd think I was doing okay. She nodded into his chest. You are. From inside the house, Kira stood at the screen door, silently watching them. Later that night, while Yolan was brushing out the embers from the fireplace, Kira approached with a thin file in her hand. What's this? He asked. Official registration. She replied the last step. He opened it and read, Yolan Cross, legal guardian of Zari and Kira Velatari status. Approved, binding, permanent. His throat tightened. He looked up. You're sure? Kira nodded. Zari, half asleep on the couch, murmured, it means he's ours, right? Kira looked at her sister, then at Yalan. No, she said softly. It means we're his, too. One stormy afternoon, they all sat together in the living room. Rain drummed against the windows. Yalan read aloud from an old Earth fairy tale. Zari sat beside him, listening with wide eyes. Kira pretended to read her own book, but she was listening too. Yalan could tell by the way she turned the page too slowly. Then, a knock at the door. Jalen stood up carefully. He glanced at the girls, both alert now, silent. He opened the door. Slowly. Outside stood a woman in plain clothes, a courier badge on her chest. No threats, no hidden weapons. Just a datapad in her hand. Commander Cross. Just you alone now, he said. She nodded and handed him the datapad. It's from the Earth Alliance Historical Archive, she explained. The children's status is officially cleared. No more bounties, no more surveillance. She turned to leave, paused, then looked back. Whatever you did out there, you changed something. Yolan nodded slowly. That was the idea. When he closed the door and turned back, Kira had already taken the pad from him. She scanned it with cautious eyes. Then, after reading the full report, she handed it to Zari. Zari smiled. We're really safe now. Kira looked at Yolan. He raised an eyebrow. You're gonna admit it yet? She smirked. Fine. I believe it. That night, as the rain softened into mist, Yalan stood outside on the porch, looking up at the stars. He didn't hear Kira walk up behind him, but he felt her presence. She stood beside him, silent for a while. Then she asked, do you ever miss it? The stars, no. The missions, the adrenaline, the danger. He thought for a moment. I miss the purpose, he said, but I've found a better one. Kira looked at him. You really didn't know who we were when you saved us. He shook his head. Didn't matter then, doesn't matter now. She turned back toward the house. You'll be a good father, she said quietly. I hope so, he replied. You already are. She stepped inside. Yalan stayed outside a moment longer, breathing in the night air. The stars glittered above, distant and cold, but in the house behind him, through the laughter, the voices, the life he hadn't expected, there was warmth. He smiled, because this was the ending he never thought he'd get. Not a war, not a mission, just 2 girls. And the man who chose them. And in choosing them, he saved himself, too.